Hello, darlings. Here is this week's recap of Holes. Chapters 7 through 13. Our friend Stanley Yelnats, he's getting a taste of what it means to be at Camp Green Lake. Every day he has to dig a big hole 6 feet deep and 6 feet wide. And remember, if you find anything interesting, he has to report it to Mr. Sir and Mr. Pendanski. That sun is just blazing down at him and he is miserable. Now we're going to go way back in time to the time of Stanley's great-great-grandfather. And remember, he's the guy who started all the bad luck to begin with. So, Stanley is telling us a little bit about his great-great-grandfather, Elia Yelnats. We're learning a little bit about what it was like when he was about 15 years old and he lived in Latvia. Latvia is a country, you can see it there, in Eastern Europe. Stanley's great-great-grandfather was in love with a beautiful girl named Myra. He thought everything would be great, but the problem was that a local pig farmer named Igor was also in love with Myra. And he told her father that if he was allowed to marry Myra, he would give him his fattest pig. Oh, Elia's devastated. He goes to see his friend Madame Zeroni, an old woman with only 1 foot. I don't know why she only has 1 foot, but she does. And he's going to ask her advice. She tells Elia that he shouldn't even bother marrying Myra because she's a little bit dense. She's got nothing upstairs other than her beauty. That's the only thing she has going for her. But Elia doesn't get it. All right, so Madame Zeroni has a plan. She's going to give him this tiny little pig. And every day he's going to carry that pig to the top of a mountain and let him drink from a stream and sing him a song. I know it sounds weird, but she's a wise old lady, so let's just go with it. On the last day, he's going to have to carry Madame Zeroni up the mountain and let her drink from the stream and sing her the song. And I know that sounds a little bit weird, but I guess Madame Zeroni can't get to the top of that mountain by herself because she only has 1 foot. So she tells him if he doesn't do this, if he doesn't fulfill his promise, things will be bad, very bad. In fact, he and all his descendants would be doomed for all of eternity. It's basically a curse. Meanwhile, back at Camp Green Lake, there's Stanley Yelnats, still digging, still miserable, still sunburned, still getting blisters, and on top of it, Mr. Sir keeps spitting his sunflower seeds into Stanley's hole. What's that about? All right, now let's go back to the great-great-grandfather. This story does a lot of popping back and forth between present time and the past. Let's see what the great-great-grandfather was up to. All right, he does what he's told, but on the day of Myra's birthday, he shows up with his pig and Igor shows up with his pig and they weigh exactly the same. So who is going to get to marry Myra? Well, the father says Myra gets to decide. And you know what? She doesn't even remember Elia's name. He's devastated. His heart is broken. He says, I don't want to marry somebody who doesn't even know my name. And so he walks around town and he decides he's going to go to America. He's going to go and start a new life. But once he sets sail on the ship, he realizes he forgot to carry Madame Zeroni up the mountain. He broke his promise. He is cursed. Meanwhile, back in Camp Green Lake, you guessed it, Stanley Yelnats, still digging. Zero, the tiniest kid in the group, is already done, and he's back at the rec room relaxing. All right, let's hear more about the great-great-grandfather. He comes to America, he gets married, but he has terrible luck. He gets married and he teaches his wife, who is awesome, the pig song. So he ends up marrying an awesome lady, And the thing is, he loved that pig song. And so he teaches it to his wife, and they sing it to their children. And their children sing it to their children. And every generation sings that song to their children. Now, back in Camp Green Lake, let me tell you a little something. You may not believe that Elia Yelnats was cursed. You may not believe in curses at all. But you know what you better believe in? Yellow-spotted lizards. Guess what yellow-spotted lizards love? Sunflower seed shells. Didn't Mr. Sir spit some in Stanley's hole? Oh boy. You know, Stanley finally finishes his hole and he goes and he takes a shower and he's exhausted. And you know what? Some of these bullies in the rec room kind of step up to him and he does not back down. And the boys are so impressed, they give him a nickname. Caveman! What a great name. Anyway, they look over and they see he's got a notepad by his bed and, you know, he starts writing a letter to his mom and he looks over his shoulder and who is watching him? Only Zero. And he looks kind of aggravated. And he asks Stanley, "Hey, those sneakers that you stole from Clyde Livingston, did they have red X's on them?" And you know what? They did. How does Zero know that? Anyway, the next day, Stanley's digging again, and he finds a rock that has a fossil of a fish on it, and he thinks, you know what? This is something really cool. If I show this to Mr. Pendanski, I'm going to get the whole day off. And so there he goes over to Mr. Pendanski to show him the fossil. Mr. Pendanski, not impressed. He sends Stanley back to work. X-Ray comes on over to him and says, "Hey, listen. If you find any more cool things, let me take credit for it because I want a day off and I'm kind of the leader around here." Oh man, it looks like Stanley will never get anywhere, never get a day off because he's going to have to give the next cool thing he finds to X-Ray. That evening, Mr. Pendanski says that each of the boys is special in his own way. Even you, Zero, he says, you're not completely worthless. Who says that? He asks Zero what he likes to do. You know what he says? "I like to dig holes." Poor Zero. Days and days of digging holes and holes and holes and blisters and sun and heat and not enough water. And one day Stanley is digging and he finds this gold tube and it's got some initials on it. KB. He says, this might be the kind of thing that Mr. Pendanski wants to see. And so he gets ready to show it to him. And X-Ray goes, "No, man, I'm the boss around here. You promised. I'm going to show him." And Stanley goes, "Well, you're almost finished with your hole. So why don't you wait till tomorrow to show him? That way you get a whole day off and not a half a day." And you know what? X-Ray's impressed. And he says to him, "You know what? When the water truck comes, you can move up a spot in the line because you see X-Ray kind of runs everything." And so when we leave off at the end of 13, they found this gold tube and X-Ray is about to turn it into Mr. Pendanski. I wonder what's going to happen next.